Hey squad, welcome back. Now it has been quite a while since I released my last video, but I assure you I have been mad busy. I've been busy working on my most recent project, which is called Grooves by Dr. Deuce, and that's going to be released real soon, and I'll be keeping you updated on where you can check that project out. However, it's great to be back, and I want to say a big thank you to all of you who have continued to support the channel by checking out the videos, liking the content and subscribing. And despite my absence, the channel has continued to grow, which is amazing. Now I assure you over the coming weeks and months, I'll be loading you up with more great, useful content that's going to help you in your production journey. Now today's video is all about mixing vocals once again, and I'm going to show you another quick route to mixing a lead vocal. I'll then do a follow-up video on how you can quickly shape and treat background vocals for your mix, but today we're going to be looking at some Logic stock plugins, as well as iZotope Nectar 3, as well as the Waves vocal rider, and how I use this collection of plugins to shape and treat a lead vocal. Now remember, if you find value in my content, like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also leave me a comment. These three actions go a long way in supporting the channel and helping the channel to grow and reach more and more people. So it's that time, let's get into it. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar with my channel, I've done a few videos on different methods to mixing vocals using Logic Pro X, as well as using tools from the iZotope plugin suite and Waves. Now we're going to take another look at mixing vocals because that's one of the most common questions I actually get when I'm working with my actual students. And of course it makes sense to be able to shape and craft and bring out the best from a good vocal performance. Now the idea of course is to be able to get a nice, clean, tasty mix using just a few essential plugins, but at the heart of it is this Nectar 3 plugin suite. You know, I've touched on this before, but I tell you what, it really is a fantastic tool and specifically designed for vocals. Everything you need in order to get your vocals sounding great is in this unit here. We'll also look at the Logic's Vintage EQ and why I use it, as well as Logic's Vintage Compressor circuits. And finally, right here, we've got the Waves vocal rider, which again is a great tool, very easy to use, but gives you some fantastic results in terms of managing your levels. Okay, so the first thing I want to point out again, as I always do, is if I'm working from a stereo instrumental, like a 2-track bounce, as we've got here, I'll always pull back the fader on that to about -6 dB or thereabouts, just to give me some headroom. Or if I leave the fader at 0 dB or unity gain, let's have a look, see how much headroom we've got. Hardly anything. And now we're going to be adding all of these vocals to the mix, which means we're definitely going to be clipping. So to avoid clipping at this stage, what we want to do is just pull this back. So like I say, I have a general rule of thumb, which is -6 dB. I can either go up higher or lower, but I generally stick to about that amount. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, there are a few go-to stock Logic plugins that I always use when I'm working with vocals, and you can check out my video on mixing with stock Logic plugins right here. It's quite a popular video on the channel, and I'm sure you'll get something from it. Anyway, let's just insert some of those. The first thing I'd have in my chain would be a Vintage EQ. And I'm going to use the Vintage Console EQ, and that's my first one. The next plugin I'll have on all of my vocal tracks is a Logic compressor, and most of the time I'll be working with either the Vintage Opto or the Vintage VCA. Now firstly, the Vintage EQ, this is modeled on a classic legendary mixing console by Neve, the Neve 1073 mixing console, which is an absolute classic. And the compressor circuit, which we're using right here, the Vintage Opto, this is modeled on the legendary Teletronics LA2A compressor. Let me show you how I generally use these plugins. Let's start off with the console EQ. And we're just going to solo this vocal track right here, just this section.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff.
Now, I'm not even using these controls on this EQ. I'll make sure I choose the color that I want to work with. And of course, I want to run it smooth. And over here, I'm going to roll off some of that bottom end. So switch in the high pass filter. Usually I'd roll off around 100 hertz. Okay. However, on this particular vocal, I'm going to roll off up to 120 hertz because her voice isn't really occupying anything that low. And I'm going to remove some of the background noise that's actually occurring within this and reduce some of the plosives as well.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by.
Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is switch in my compressor. I'm using the vintage Opto. Go for a quick preset if we were to go to voice and come here to Opto Vocal 1. Switch that in. And I'm going to switch in the soft distortion and just play back. And all I want to do is just control some of those peaks. So let's play back the vocal.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by, but don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies.
Okay, so all I'm trying to do is manage some of the peaks as they come through. There's just some gentle compression. The ratio is about 4:1, and the release time is quite slow. It's not too fast. The attack is fairly quick, but the release is nice and slow. By using the soft distortion, we're adding some additional color, some additional harmonics to the actual lead vocal. And that's all I'm going to do with those two. As I was messing with the compressor, the volume of the vocal was going up quite loud. So what I made sure to do was to pull back the volume fader just to make sure that we weren't clipping. Next thing I'm going to do is employ Nectar. Nectar 3 is a fantastic tool. It's filled with all of the plugins that are specifically tailored for mixing vocals. And if you were to click here, you can choose from a whole range of additional plugins that you can add into your chain. However, what we're going to do right now is we are going to use the Vocal Assistant. And let me show you how that works. Now, what we do is we click Vocal Assistant. This is going to perform an analysis of my vocal and come up with some suggestions on which individual modules might work well within Nectar on this particular lead vocal track. So what I'm going to do is click here, Assist, and Next. And I'm going for, let's go for a modern vibe and moderate intensity. Now I need to play back the song.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions pass you by, but don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers. Like you can't see without vision. You can't live life without wisdom. Humble yourself. You need to change your ways. With all of God's help, turn from your wicked ways.
I'm going to hit accept. Okay, so what's been added to the chain is the pitch correction, a gate. The gate is switched off at the moment. EQ1, and this is the EQ curve. It's added a de-esser. Okay, another EQ, and a compressor and a reverb. Okay, so let's play that back once again. I'm going to loop that.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by, but don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers. You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by, but don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers, like you can't see without vision.
Now, how quick was that? Fantastic, wasn't it? The machine learning, artificial intelligence of this plugin is absolutely brilliant. Of course, you could have gone another route, and you could have gone by using presets and gone for music and just kind of work your way through all of these fantastic presets that come with Nectar, and found one that kind of fit the sound you're looking for and then shape it accordingly. However, I find the vocal assistant to be a really cool starting point. And then from there, I can add some additional touches. Next thing I might do on this vocal in particular is I think I'll add some delay. So let's go to the delay section here. And I generally like to have my delay before the reverb. So I'm going to put it that way round. And let's go for a tape delay. All right. Now let's play that back.
You gotta wake up.
Of course, that's too much or too loud. The repeats, the feedback is too loud. So we're going to pull this all the way down to 0 and then just bleed it in.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by, but don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers, like you can't see without vision. You can't live life without wisdom. Humble yourself. You need to change your ways with all of God's help. Turn from your wicked ways. The Lord is not slowing, keeping his promise, but he will expose.
Next thing I might do is I might just add a little bit of additional tape saturation. So let's come over here and we go to saturation. I'm going to add the saturation just after the EQ. Okay, but before the compressor. I'm going to go extreme so you can actually see what's happening in the window.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by, but don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers, like you can't see without vision. You can't live life without wisdom. Humble yourself. You need to change your ways.
Again, you add to taste. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit more brightness to this vocal.
You gotta wake up. They put the wool over your eyes with all of this fake stuff. You let illusions and lies pass you by,
Let's
but
bypass.
don't you have questions about them? Well, I know someone with answers, like you can't see without vision. You can't live life without wisdom. Humble yourself. You need to change your ways with all of.
That's sounding really, really sweet, really lovely. Works really well with the instrumental. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you on this lead vocal track is how I use the Waves Vocal Rider plugin along with these other tools right here. And what this does is, let's go to the very beginning section of this song. I'm going to bypass the waves. Have a listen to this intro section. Now, there's a definite inconsistency with the level of the vocal here as it builds intensity, and as she eases off and works through this whole section, the level of the vocal does definitely change. Now, we can remedy this by using volume automation on the track or compression to try and level things up. However, an old school method that I used to use back in the day before I had all of these tools when I was working in the analog domain was riding the vocal fader, meaning as the vocal dipped down a bit too low, I'd push the fader up, and when the vocal went up a bit too high, I'd pull the fader down. And that was one of the classic ways of doing vocal mixing. Not just vocal mixing, just mixing in general. It's very labor intensive, and you've got to keep track of what's happening where and really understand what's going on across the whole mix. However, this is an automated version of adjusting the vocal level. And to do so, all I need to do is determine that my target volume, which I'd say, let's bump this up to about let's say minus 14 dB. Okay, which you see right here. The sensitivity of the vocal, I want it to be probably about 2 o'clock. And I want to narrow this range so the fader doesn't go above this or below this section. And let's play this back now. Now, how amazing is that? With one really simple plugin, we're able to automatically adjust the overall level of the vocal, raising up the volume fader when the vocal increases in intensity and backing off the volume fader when the vocal dips down. Absolutely brilliant. Now, I hope this quick overview of using some Logic stock plugins along with Nectar 3 and the vocal rider on a lead vocal, hopefully that's made some sense to you. And in the next video, I'll show you how we're going to finish things off by mixing the background vocals again using Nectar and some of these tools. So make sure you check back again real soon. I'm Deuce, I'm out, peace.